Over the years, John Canning Studios has been fortunate to work in national landmarks throughout the country. It's been a real honor and pleasure working in some of these magnificent spaces, from Radio City Music Hall to Warner Theater, Stadium Theater, and the like. We've been able to see the transformation of these spaces from something that may have been drab and dreary, non-functioning, frankly, in some cases, to wonderful, transformative interiors.
My name is Barry Koppel. I am the operations manager. Started construction in 1929 and opened in April of 1931. The restoration work done by John Canning and Company was done in 2002. And the impact that has had, in my opinion, is when somebody walks in the front door for the very first time, or somebody that has originally been from Erie but hasn't been here in 30 or 40 years. And they walk through that front door and they look up and see this grand lobby, and their mouth opens, their jaws drop. And really you only hear one or two words, "Oh my God," or "Wow." And I think that says it all.
One enters a grand foyer of a theater, such as Warner. It is so large and the space is so tall. When you begin walking down this wonderful corridor similar to it, you realize that this is a much bigger event than maybe even anticipated, and it's going to be quite grand.
My name is John Meyer. I'm a retired architect. I specialized in historic preservation for 40 years. My practice was in the state of Michigan. The State Theater was originally constructed in 1918. It was renovated in 1930 in the style of a Mayan temple. At about the turn of the century, a group of local art supporters started a movement to purchase and rehabilitate the theater. Rehabilitation was completed in phases as funds became available. The final phase came in 2005 when John Canning was hired to investigate the decorative painting scheme that had been overpainted and to restore the decoration. The decorative painting implemented by Canning is classified as partial restoration with some interpretation, as the exact details of the original designs could not be determined. The end product is very true to the Mayan style and is truly enhancing to the high-quality rehabilitation of the theater. Today, the State Theater, rehabilitated on the interior and displaying an elegant Mayan marquee on the exterior, is a shining gem in Bay City's historic downtown. The State Theater is a vital part of the arts and entertainment aspect of Bay City. Historic architecture reflects our past and strengthens our future.
I'm the Executive Director of the Meyer Performing Arts Center in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. The Meyer Theater was built in 1905 and then restored in 2005. We're a performing arts center in Berkshires. We host about 40,000 individuals a year for between 140 and 150 programs a year. The Meyer Performing Arts Center building was just about to be torn down at the end of the last century and was in tremendous disrepair. And a group of citizens came together out of love for the good bones of that theater and for the good work that had been done there for 100 years, and invested in, brought back to historic detail from a portion of its history as a movie house in the early 1930s. It means a lot to people to be able to walk a theater that takes them back in time. They appreciate the aesthetic integrity of that. Our audiences love that. And it makes the experience that much richer to be in one of these wonderful historic theaters that really encompass you in the experience.
Hello, my name is Jonathan Schloss, and I am the principal of Jonathan Schloss Architect. Radio City doesn't require a whole lot of introduction to most people. It's one of the most notable interior landmarks in New York City, but the subtle and beauty of its design, the intent of its original designers, the execution of the incredible team that did this work really does require some explanation. Donald Desky was a young designer at the time he won the competition to design the interiors of Radio City Music Hall. He hired a talented group of designers and artists to work with him, each on a very specific area of the hall. One of the things that actually ties all of this together is the use of gilded surfaces in many of the spaces in the main hall, in the lobbies, in the ladies' room, the men's room, the smoking lounges, as it were, and a variety of different metals and surfaces, Dutch metal, copper leaf, aluminum leaf, gold leaf, were all used to different effect, but to tie together that sort of golden glow that Radio City was known for. Working with John Canning and Company on Radio City Music Hall was a fascinating process and completely enjoyable in the sense that I got to see the types of techniques and the type of expertise they could bring to an incredibly complicated gilding project. The gilding on the project in Dutch metal, in gold leaf, in copper leaf, aluminum leaf, glazing and tinting, the type of architectural surfaces that each of these would reside in. For example, the curve of the staircase in the grand foyer, the underside of the balconies, the ceiling in a particular lounge to give a certain impression. All of these things contribute to the design whole that Donald Desky really intended for the project.
My name is Andy Maloney. I'm an architect with the City and County of San Francisco's Department of Public Works, Bureau of Architecture. I had the pleasure to work with the John Canning Company on the San Francisco War Memorial Opera House and the War Memorial Veterans Building renovation projects. Both projects are city, state, and national historic landmark buildings. Both buildings are icons of San Francisco. The original architect for the War Memorial was Arthur Brown Jr. They were built concurrently during the Depression and completed in 1932. Both buildings were designed in the French Renaissance Beaux-Arts style, of which Mr. Brown was a true master. Both buildings have matching front facades and other similar matching features, but are not identical. Architecturally, the goal of both projects would be to make the buildings look like they did when they first opened, with the exception of minor changes back of house to suit modern-day operational and functional needs. The original buildings had a lot of gilded surfaces, especially the opera's front of house. The only person who understood the extent of it and its potential was John Canning. I remember the excitement of opening night, September 29th, 1997. The Opera House looked, and still does 23 years later, really good at night. As people came through the front doors on Van Ness, you could see arms raised and pointing fingers at Jackie and David's foyer's coffered ceiling. Excitement was building. Imaginations were in gear as to how they did it. You could read their minds. All this gold had been hidden for so many years. Who knew? I dare say there was not a dry eye in the house. There was no one more responsible for the success of the project than John Canning Company. In 2014, our paths crossed again. The city finally had the money to do the Opera House's twin brother, the War Memorial Veterans Building. Vets is a beautiful building, but more practical, multifunctional, less decorated, and more straightforward. The Vets building wasn't designed with as much gilding as the Opera House because each building served a different purpose. The Vets building has a historic green room, which was originally a library. Now it is used for events such as weddings and parties and meetings. It's a beautiful room with an oak parquet floor, ornamental painted green walls with arches and pilasters and trim, matched arched windows and mirrors, entablatures, ceiling beams, freestanding classical columns, all having bands of gilding everywhere. The Herbst is a 900-seat theater with a balcony, mezzanine boxes, orchestra level, orchestra pit, and fully rigged stage. The theater was designed originally as a multi-purpose theater with a dance floor and removable seats for shows. There is a good amount of wall and ceiling ornament. Gilding is distributed throughout the theater on moldings of all sorts, cornices, wall pilasters, and ceiling beams and ventilation grills. The project was very similar to opera. A a major remodel with structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection, elevator, theatrical roofing, ADA, preservation, and other operational and functional architectural upgrades. Like his twin across the court, Vets was brought back to his former glory. Logistical challenges did occur for Canning here also, but the crew led by John David and Michael DeLuco in the field made the work look relatively routine, and they did a fantastically beautiful job. Next time you're in San Francisco, I hope you get a chance to see their work.
I can recall when we started working at Stadium Theater. When we first entered the building, it was grayed out. The interior was gray washed, if you will, from floor to ceiling. Looking back on it, you could see the soul of the space was completely taken out. It was taken out emotionally, but by the time we left and turned the keys over back to the community, the space was full of color, full of vibrancy. The soul was back. And that is, in the end, what we desire to do. What our mission is to bring forth is to make sure that the space is transformative. When one walks into these restored theaters, they once again transport themselves from their everyday lives to this wonderful world of theater and theatrics and all that goes along with it, including the wonderful opulent architecture. And it's wonderful to see that happen